Welcome to the InnoGuide Podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. In this episode, number 46, we'll be sharing part 2 of The Empire of AI by Karen Hao. When OpenAI unveiled the ChatGPT-3 API in June 2020, it sent shockwaves through the AI world. While the frenzy that would later accompany ChatGPT was still 2 years away, GPT-3 laid the groundwork for the industry's pivot toward massive language models. Companies like Google, DeepMind, Meta, and even Chinese tech giants like Alibaba and Baidu began to take notice, though their responses varied. At Google, Jeff Dean, head of Google Research, urged the company to consolidate its resources and train a unified large-scale model. But Google's leadership hesitated, only to declare a code red after ChatGPT's success. DeepMind, meanwhile, began allocating more resources to large language models, influenced by Jeffrey Irving, a former OpenAI researcher who championed the pure language hypothesis. Pure languages in quotes. Meta, under the leadership of Yann LeCun, initially dismissed the scaling trend as brute force, only for Mark Zuckerberg to regret the company's inaction when ChatGPT ignited the generative AI race. In China, companies treated large-scale models as just another research avenue rather than a transformational shift. But as ChatGPT demonstrated the commercial potential of these models, the global AI landscape began to change rapidly. The environmental cost of scaling. The scaling of AI models came with a hidden cost, their massive carbon footprint. In 2019, Emma Struble, a PhD candidate at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, published a groundbreaking paper quantifying the environmental impact of training large language models. She estimated that training a single transformer model could consume as much energy as a round-trip flight from New York to San Francisco. More complex processes like Google's neural architecture search consumed energy equivalent to 5 cars over their lifetime. GPT-3, trained on a supercomputer in Iowa, dwarfed these figures. It consumed 1,287 megawatt-hours of energy, generating twice the emissions of Google's evolved transformer. Yet OpenAI initially shared only one number with the public, GPT-3's 175 billion parameters. The environmental toll of scaling AI was becoming impossible to ignore. Ethical concerns and marginalized voices. For Timid Gebru, a prominent AI ethics researcher and co-lead of Google's ethical AI team, GPT-3 raised alarm bells. Gebru had long been a vocal advocate for addressing the societal harms of AI, co-authoring influential papers like Gender Shades, which exposed racial and gender biases in facial recognition systems. She also co-founded Black in AI, a group that supported marginalized researchers and challenged the entire AI industry's trajectory. Gebru was deeply concerned about the biases embedded in GPT-3, which is trained on vast, unfiltered datasets like Common Crawl, which just crawls the web. These datasets included toxic content from platforms like Reddit, which Gebru, as a Black woman, avoided due to its history of harassment. Her fears were validated when GPT-3 generated harmful outputs such as suggesting Ethiopia's problems could be solved by destroying Ethiopia, or produced lewd responses to innocuous prompts. Gebru's warnings about GPT-3's ethical implications were largely ignored within Google. Frustrated, she proposed a research paper later titled On the Dangers of Stochastic Parrots, co-authored with Emily M. Bender and others. The paper outlined 4 key risks of large language models: their environmental impact, the toxicity of their training data, the difficulty of auditing data sets, and the potential for people to mistake their outputs as meaningful or factual. The fallout at Google, a reckoning for ethical AI. When Gebru sought approval to publish the Stochastic Parrots paper, Google executives saw it as a threat. The company, which had invented the transformer and was racing to develop its own large-scale models, viewed the paper's critique as a liability. Gebru was blindsided when Megan Pacholia, Google's research VP of engineering, demanded she retract the paper. Gebru's requests for clarification and compromise were denied, and she was ultimately fired after refusing to comply. Gebru's firing sparked a firestorm. Her tweet announcing her termination went viral, and an open letter protesting Google's actions garnered nearly 7,000 signatures, including 2,700 from Google employees. The incident became a symbol of the growing tension between corporate interests and ethical research in AI. It highlighted the industry's lack of diversity, its retaliation against whistleblowers, and its increasing opacity. Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai, issued a public apology, but the damage was done. The ethical AI team at Google, once a beacon of accountability, was effectively dismantled. Meg Mitchell, Gevru's co-lead, was fired a few months later, and several other researchers resigned in protest. The fallout marked a turning point, accelerating the industry's shift towards secrecy and diminishing transparency. The erosion of transparency and scientific integrity. The GPT-3 era ushered in a new norm, the withholding of critical research details. OpenAI, which had already limited transparency with GPT-2, published a sanitized paper on GPT-3, omitting key information about its training process. Other companies followed suit, sealing off access to meaningful technical details under the guise of protecting proprietary information. This lack of transparency undermined the scientific integrity of AI research. Without access to training data, researchers couldn't verify whether models were genuinely improving or simply regurgitating answers from their datasets. A 2023 transparency tracker by Stanford revealed that major AI companies, including OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic, all received failing grades for their lack of disclosure. The legacy of stochastic parrots. The stochastic parrots paper became a rallying cry for ethical AI. It exposed the industry's blind spots and forced a reckoning with the question, what kind of future are we building with AI? And who gets to decide? Yet the backlash against Gevru and her team also revealed the immense power imbalance in the AI industry. Companies like Google and OpenAI, with their vast resources and influence, could stifle dissent and shape the narrative to suit their interests. As the race to scale AI continues, the lessons of this chapter remain urgent. The environmental, ethical, and societal costs of AI demand accountability, transparency, and a commitment to building technology that serves humanity, not just corporate profits. But as the industry grows more secretive and competitive, the question remains, will we rise to the challenge, or will science remain in captivity? Chapter 8, Dawn of Commerce. Let me take you through the pivotal year of 2021, when OpenAI fully embraced commercialization, scaling its ambitions, and reshaping its identity. In this chapter, Dawn of Commerce, it's about how OpenAI doubled down on its scaling strategy, navigated ethical dilemmas, and began to intertwine its mission with the business world. Along the way, Sam Altman's personal investments and vision for the future added layers of complexity to the company's trajectory. Scaling to the next level, the 2021 roadmap. OpenAI's leadership was laser-focused on scaling. The departure of the Anthropic team had removed much of the internal resistance to commercialization, allowing the company to align its research and productization efforts. OpenAI's new roadmap laid out an ambitious goal to build an aligned system vastly more capable than anything before. This system would start out as a language model, but could evolve into multimodal capabilities, combining text, images, and even autonomous goal setting. The plan revolved around three key strategies. 1. Scaling compute. OpenAI aimed to scale GPT-3 by another 10x, using a new Microsoft supercomputer with 18,000 NVIDIA A100 GPUs, the most powerful chips available at the time. 2. Improving efficiency. Companies sought to increase compute efficiency by 25x, using techniques like distillation, simplifying large models, data filtering, and sparsity, reducing the computational costs by connecting fewer nodes and neural networks. And 3. Enhancing training data. OpenAI planned to refine its models using reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF, and user data to improve both quality and quantity of training data. So it was scaling compute, improving efficiency, and enhancing training data. Roadmap also emphasized the importance of scaling language, code, and multimodal models to achieve breakthroughs in reasoning and meta-learning, learning to learn. OpenAI believed that with enough breakthroughs, it could reach AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. However, the document acknowledged that scaling alone was no longer enough. The company needed to explore new methods to steepen the performance curves, such as reasoning and active learning. the applied division, from research to product. While the research division focused on scaling, the applied division worked to turn OpenAI's models into products. The GPT-3 API became a testing ground for monetization and user feedback. OpenAI hired a sales team, engineers, and a go-to-market lead to refine its infrastructure and pricing strategy. But commercialization brought new challenges, particularly around trust and safety. OpenAI lacked a formal trust and safety team, so it relied on ad hoc rules to approve or reject API applications. For example, the company allowed companion bots but banned sex bots, and it permitted social media copywriting tools but prohibited apps that impersonated public figures. These decisions were often arbitrary, described by one insider as all vibes, in quotes. One early customer, Replica, sparked internal debate. Replica's AI-powered companion app used GPT-3 to improve conversational fluidity, but users often engaged in sexually explicit conversation with the bots. OpenAI ultimately banned Replica, citing concerns about sexual content and emotionally manipulative responses. Another incident involved Latitude, a startup using GPT-3 to power a choose-your-own-adventure game. Some users generated child sexual abuse materials within the game, leading to a crisis at OpenAI. Companies scrambled to address the issue, but the incident highlighted the risks of deploying powerful AI without robust safeguards. The rise of Codex, AI for code generation. Amid these challenges, OpenAI's code generation team made rapid progress. After seeing GPT-3's ability to generate code, OpenAI began developing a specialized model called Codex, C-O-D-E-X. Microsoft, which owned GitHub, provided OpenAI with access to all public code repositories on the platform, sparking ethical concerns about the use of open-source data for commercial purposes. Codex was fine-tuned on GitHub data, Stack Overflow posts, coding manuals, and textbooks. The team hypothesized that training on code would improve the model's reasoning abilities, key step toward AGI. By summer 2021, OpenAI delivered an early version of Codex to Microsoft and GitHub. However, the model was too large and slow for practical use, leading to tensions between the companies over optimization and credit. Eventually, OpenAI and Microsoft reached a compromise. GitHub launched its consumer-facing product, Copilot, in 2021, while OpenAI released Codex through its API in August. Copilot became a commercial success, attracting 1 million paid subscribers and generating over $100 million in annual revenue. But for OpenAI, the experience underscored the drawbacks of relying on Microsoft. The company felt it was losing control over its vision, user data, and brand recognition. Sam Altman's big bets. While OpenAI scaled its ambitions, Sam Altman was making bold moves of his own. In 2021, he shifted his investment strategy toward a few high-stakes projects, reflecting his belief in long-term thinking. Two of his largest investments were, 1. Retro Biosciences. Altman invested $180 million in this anti-aging company, which aimed to extend human lifespans through cellular rejuvenation. His fascination with longevity also led him to explore controversial ideas like young blood research and brain preservation for potential future uploading. And the second investment was Helion Energy. Altman poured $375 million into this nuclear fission startup, which promised to deliver clean, abundant energy. Helion committed to building its first plant by 2028, a timeline that astonished energy experts. Altman also ramped up his involvement in Tools for Humanity, a startup he co-founded to explore universal basic income. Its main product, WorldCoin, used a chrome orb to scan people's irises and distribute cryptocurrency. While Altman saw this as a way to prepare for an AI-driven economy, the project faced criticism for privacy violations and exploitative practices, particularly in the Global South. At OpenAI, Altman launched the $100 million startup fund to support early-stage companies using AI. While some saw this as a way to replicate Y Combinator's network effects, others viewed it as another example of Altman's deal-making instincts. Despite his claims of altruism, Altman's financial ties to OpenAI and its partners complicated his narrative of selflessness. By 2024, his net worth would exceed $2.8 billion. The dawn of a new era. By the end of 2021, OpenAI had firmly transitioned from a research lab to a commercial powerhouse. Its focus on scaling, productization, and partnerships with Microsoft positioned it as a leader in the AI race. But the company's rapid growth came with ethical dilemmas, strained relationships, and questions about its long-term vision. As OpenAI pushed forward, it became clear that the stakes were higher than ever. The company's mission to build AGI that benefits humanity was now intertwined with the demands of commerce, raising the question, could OpenAI balance its lofty ideals with the realities of the business world? Only time will tell. Chapter 9. Disaster Capitalism. This chapter, Disaster Capitalism, dives into the hidden, exploitative labor practices that underpin the AI industry, revealing the human cost of OpenAI's relentless pursuit of scale and innovation. It's a story of how the company's vision for generative AI, built on massive data sets and human feedback, created a global network of underpaid, overworked, and often invisible laborers. From Kenya to Venezuela, this chapter exposes the systemic exploitation of workers in economically vulnerable regions whose contributions are essential yet undervalued. The shift from data inputs to output control. By 2021, OpenAI had shifted its focus from filtering data inputs to controlling model outputs. This change was driven by the need to address the problems that arose with GPT-3, such as its unfiltered and often harmful outputs, to prepare for the next generation of models, including GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. OpenAI began developing a robust content moderation filter. This filter would act as a safeguard, flagging and removing offensive content before it reached users. To build this feature, OpenAI needed human workers to review and categorize vast amounts of explicit and harmful content. The company outsourced this work to Sama, a Kenyan-based firm that had previously worked with Meta. Sama's workers were tasked with reading and labeling grotesque, text-based descriptions of violence, abuse, and sexual content. These annotations were used to train OpenAI's models to avoid generating such outputs. Exploitation in Kenya. The hidden cost of AI. Kenya became a hub for OpenAI's content moderation due to its low wages, high unemployment, and government eagerness to attract foreign investment. Sama, which marketed itself as an ethical outsourcing company, paid workers between $1.46 and $3.74 an hour to review some of the most disturbing content imaginable. Workers were kept in the dark about the purpose of their work, shielded by non-disclosure agreements. The toll on workers was immense. Many, like Mofat Okini, a quality analyst on the sexual content team, suffered severe psychological distress. The work involved categorizing horrifying scenarios, including child sexual abuse and rape, often generated by OpenAI's own models to train its filters. Over time, the graphic nature of the content broke many workers, leading to many mental health struggles, strained relationships, and a sense of dehumanization. Sama provided limited mental health resources, but these were often inadequate. Workers feared seeking help, worried it would make them appear weak or jeopardize their jobs. By March 2022, Sama terminated its contract with OpenAI, citing a shift in project scope. However, the damage to workers like Okinyi was already done. His mental health deteriorated, his marriage fell apart, and he struggled to find stability. The global pipeline of exploited labor. The exploitation of Kenyan workers was not an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern in the AI industry. Companies like OpenAI and its partners relied on a global network of low-wage labor to annotate data and refine models. This system, often referred to as ghost work, was first documented in the book Ghost Work by Mary L. Gray and Siddharth Suri. It revealed how tech giants built their empires on the backs of invisible workers, often in the global south, who were paid pennies to perform essential tasks. Venezuela became another key source of cheap labor during its economic collapse. Hyperinflation, unemployment, and political instability drove many Venezuelans to platforms like Appen and Scale AI, where they performed data annotation to self-driving cars and later generative AI. Workers like Oscarina Fuentesana, a Venezuelan refugee in Colombia, described the grueling nature of the work, the erratic pay, and the constant fear of losing access to the platform. Scale AI, founded by Alexander Wang, became a dominant player in the data annotation industry by exploiting these crises. The company targeted countries with educated but economically desperate populations, offering high initial pay before slashing wages. In Venezuela, workers who once earned $40 a week saw their pay drop to less than $6. Scale's practices mirrored those of empires past, extracting maximum value from multiple populations while offering little in return. Reinforcement learning from human feedback. As OpenAI scaled its models, it leaned heavily on reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF, to improve their usability and safety. RLHF involved hiring workers to write example answers to prompts, rank model outputs, and provide feedback. This process was essential for refining models like InstructGPT, which became the foundation for ChatGPT. Workers were tasked with everything from writing essays and poems to solving math problems and summarizing text. They were given detailed instructions on tone, style, and content, often using the internet to craft responses. While RLHF improved model performance, it also highlighted the industry's reliance on human labor to train AI systems. The human cost of generative AI. Release of ChatGPT in late 2022 marked a turning point for the AI industry, but it also intensified the demand for RLHF workers. Scale AI, which had struggled after the self-driving car boom, found new life as a supplier of RLHF labor. However, the shift to generative AI work excluded many of the workers who had built the foundation of the industry. Venezuelans, once a key labor force, were relegated to image annotation or blacklisted entirely. Kenya, too, was eventually cut off from Scale's platform as the company shifted its focus to higher-educated workers in the global north. For workers like Winnie, a Kenyan worker who relied on Scale's platform to support her family, the shutdown was devastating. After years of grueling work, often earning less than $1 per task, she was left with no income and mounting debts. The email informing her the shutdown was cold and impersonal, a stark reminder of how little the industry valued its workers. The empire of AI. The exploitation of labor in the AI industry is not an accident, but a feature of its design. Companies like OpenAI and Scale AI have built their empires on the backs of invisible workers, extracting value while distancing themselves from responsibility. The race to scale generative AI has only deepened these inequalities, devaluing the labor of those who make the technology possible. As the industry moves forward, the question remains, can AI be developed in a way that values and protects the people behind it? Or will the pursuit of profit continue to come at the expense of human dignity? For workers like Hokinyi, Fuentes, and Winnie, the answer is painfully clear. Chapter 10, Gods and Demons. Let me take you on a journey through the contradictions, ideologies, and tensions that define the tech world, particularly in San Francisco, where the future and the present collide in a dizzying dance of privilege, ambition, and dissonance. This chapter, Gods and Demons, is a deep dive into the cultural, philosophical, and technological forces shaping the AI industry with a particular focus on OpenAI, its competitors, and the ideologies that fuel them. The San Francisco dichotomy. Living and working in San Francisco's tech scene is like living in two worlds at once. When I first moved to the city as a young intern, I was enchanted by its charm, the colorful Spanish-style homes, steep hills, and the endless supply of avocados and sourdough bread. Life was idyllic, filled with hikes, house parties, and a sense of camaraderie among young tech workers. But beneath this veneer of privilege lay a stark reality. On my way to work, I'd pass people shooting up drugs or sleeping on the streets. Just blocks from offices where startups offered free gourmet lunches and Uber rides home. This glaring contrast between the tech industry's utopian promises and the city's harsh realities was impossible to ignore. Even Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, acknowledged this dissonance. He lamented how the tech industry, despite its wealth and influence, had failed to address San Francisco's housing crisis or its growing inequality. It was easier, he noted, for people to focus on abstract, far-off problems like artificial general intelligence, AGI, than to confront the immediate challenges right outside their doors. Effective altruism, the perfect Silicon Valley ideology. Enter effective altruism, EA, a philosophy that bounds fertile ground in Silicon Valley. EA preaches using logic and evidence to make the world a better place, often focusing on the far future rather than the present. It's a philosophy tailor-made for the tech elite, blending capitalism, libertarianism, and morality into a single framework. At its core is the concept of expected value, which calculates the potential impact of an action by multiplying its probability of success by its potential benefits. This led to counterintuitive ideas like the notion that it's more altruistic to take a high-paying job and donate money than to work directly for a charity, a concept encapsulated in the EA mantra, earn to give. EA's framework for prioritizing problems, focusing on issues that are big in scale, tractable, and neglected, led to three key areas of focus: global health, factory farming, and existential risks like pandemics, nuclear war, and rogue AI. This last category, existential AI risk, became deeply entwined with OpenAI's mission and played a pivotal role in the ideological split that would later fracture the company. The rise of Anthropic and the safety-first movement. The ideological divide within OpenAI came to a head with the divorce, when several key researchers, including Dario Amodei, left to form Anthropic. They believed OpenAI under Altman's leadership was recklessly accelerating AI development without sufficient regard to safety. Anthropic positioned itself as the principled alternative, prioritizing AI safety above all else. This split mirrored a broader tension in the AI community between doomers, who advocate slowing down AI to mitigate existential risks, and boomers, who see rapid technological progress as a moral imperative. Effective altruisms fall from grace. EA's influence in the tech world grew rapidly, fueled by funding from billionaires like Dustin Moskovitz and Sam Bankman-Fried. SBF, a crypto mogul inspired by EA, pledged to donate his fortune to altruistic causes, but became a symbol of the movement's excesses and ethical lapses when his company FTX collapsed in a scandal. The fallout tarnished EA's reputation, but its ideas, particularly its focus on AI safety, continued to shape the industry. The battle over DALL-E 2. OpenAI's development of DALL-E 2, a text-to-image model, highlighted the growing tensions between its applied division, focused on commercialization, and its safety teams concerned with ethical risks. DALL-E 2's ability to generate photorealistic images raised fears about its potential misuse for creating deepfakes or synthetic child abuse material. Safety teams pushed for rigorous testing and restrictions, while applied teams argued that the real-world feedback was essential for improving the model. The compromise was to release DALL-E 2 as a research preview with strict safeguards, but the experience left many feeling that OpenAI was losing ground to competitors like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, which offered fewer restrictions and better performance. GPT-4, a turning point. The development of GPT-4 was fraught with challenges, from a lack of data to internal conflicts. Greg Brockman, OpenAI's co-founder, spearheaded the effort, scraping data from YouTube and building new training platforms. The result was a model that wowed many, including Bill Gates, who initially dismissed it but later called its performance on an AP biology test one of the most stunning demos he'd ever seen. GPT-4's success reignited debates about AGI's feasibility and timeline. For some, it was proof that AGI was within reach. For others, it was a reminder of the industry's tendency to overhype its achievements. The model's release also exposed tensions between OpenAI's applied and safety divisions as the company struggled to balance its mission of advancing AI for humanity with the commercial pressures of staying ahead in the competitive market. The cultural divide. This chapter also delves into the cultural and ideological divides within OpenAI and the broader AI community. Terms like P-doom, probability of doom, and AI timeline became part of the lexicon, reflecting the existential stakes that many felt were at play. Meanwhile, the influx of non-AI professionals into OpenAI's applied division created friction with the safety teams, who often spoke a different language, both literally and metaphorically. The chapter ends on a surreal note, with OpenAI's co-founder Ilya Sutskever leading a symbolic ritual at a company retreat. He burned an effigy representing a deceitful AGI, urging employees to stay focused on their mission. It was a dramatic reminder of the almost religious fervor with which some in the AI community approach their work, viewing AGI as both a promise and a peril. This chapter, Gods and Demons, captures the contradictions and complexities of the AI industry, where lofty ideals clash with harsh realities, and the pursuit of progress is both exhilarating and fraught with peril. It's a story of ambition, ideology, and the human tendency to project our hopes and fears onto the technologies we create. Chapter 11, Apex. Let me tell you about a pivotal moment in OpenAI's journey, a time when the company's ambitions, challenges, and contradictions reached a fever pitch. This chapter, Apex, captures the whirlwind of events that followed the release of ChatGPT, the internal struggles it sparked, and the seismic shifts it caused in the tech world. The Monterey offsite, a moment of triumph. In October 2022, OpenAI gathered its 300 employees in Monterey, California for a company-wide offsite. This event was a celebration of the company's growth and achievements, with executives presenting updates on everything from Microsoft's massive data center expansions to OpenAI's growing influence in Washington, D.C. The atmosphere was electric, with one former employee describing the demos of new projects as mind-boggling. Greg Brockman, one of OpenAI's co-founders, even shared a personal story about how GPT-4 had helped diagnose his wife's rare medical condition, underscoring the transformative potential of AGI in healthcare. But this moment of triumph was short-lived. Rumors began circulating that Anthropic, OpenAI's rival, was preparing to release a chatbot. Although the rumors were unfounded, they spurred OpenAI into action. The company decided to release a chat-enabled version of GPT 3.5, branded as ChatGPT, within just 2 weeks. The launch was framed as a low-key research preview, much like DALL-E 2, with the goal of gathering user data to improve GPT-4. The unleashing of ChatGPT. On November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT quietly launched. Most employees didn't even realize it had happened, as the release coincided with the NeurIPS conference in New Orleans. But the world noticed. Within hours, ChatGPT went viral, with users from Japan to the US flooding servers. Even Elon Musk chimed in, tweeting about the chatbot and amplifying its reach. By the end of the weekend, ChatGPT had over 1 million users. Within 2 months, it had reached 100 million, becoming the fastest-growing consumer app in history at the time. The success of ChatGPT caught everyone at OpenAI off guard. GPT 3.5 wasn't a massive leap in capability over GPT-3, and the model had already been available to developers. The difference was the chat interface, which made the technology accessible to a much broader audience. Employees had expected a modest reception, but instead they found themselves grappling with a global phenomenon. The fallout, triumph, and turmoil. ChatGPT's runaway success was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it catapulted OpenAI into the global spotlight, transforming it from a well-known tech startup into a household name. On the other hand, it placed enormous strain on the company. Servers crashed repeatedly as the infrastructure team scrambled to scale up capacity. The trust and safety team, already stretched thin, struggled to monitor and address bad behavior among the flood of new users. Efforts to build new tools and systems were derailed as resources were redirected to stabilize the platform. The chaos highlighted a recurring issue within OpenAI, its inability to predict the societal impact of its technologies. Some employees in the safety division questioned how the company could have so badly underestimated ChatGPT's popularity and user behavior. To others, the crashing servers were a badge of honor, a sign that OpenAI had built something so profound that it had lit up the world. The strain of rapid growth. The success of ChatGPT also forced OpenAI to confront the challenges of rapid growth. Managers begged CEO Sam Altman for more staff, but he resisted, fearing that scaling too quickly would dilute the company's talent and mission. Despite his reservations, the company eventually added hundreds of new employees, leading to a dramatic shift in its culture. Longtime employees lamented the loss of the scrappy, mission-driven spirit that had defined OpenAI's early days. New hires, meanwhile, found themselves navigating a chaotic and high-pressure environment where firings were common and the stakes were sky-high. Microsoft's role, partner and competitor. ChatGPT's success also reshaped OpenAI's relationship with Microsoft. Initially, Microsoft executives were annoyed that the chatbot had overshadowed their own AI efforts, like Bing AI. But as ChatGPT's popularity soared, Microsoft became even more invested in its partnership with OpenAI. The tech giant reallocated resources, including GPUs, to support OpenAI's operations and began integrating its models into products like Microsoft 365 Copilot. However, the partnership wasn't without tension. OpenAI and Microsoft found themselves competing for customers, and the sheer volume of Microsoft's requests overwhelmed OpenAI's staff. To streamline communication, Microsoft embedded engineers within OpenAI, deepening the integration between the two companies. Meanwhile, both Altman and Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, worked closely to manage the escalating demands for compute resources, sketching out plans for a $100 billion supercomputer project called Stargate. The commercialization of OpenAI. ChatGPT marked a turning point for OpenAI, solidifying its shift from a nonprofit research lab to a commercial enterprise. In early 2023, the company launched a paid version of ChatGPT, followed by an API and GPT-4. These products generated significant revenue but also created new challenges. Fraudulent accounts exploited free usage credits, and the trust and safety teams struggled to keep up with the surge in activity. The constant pressure led to burnout and departures, including that of trust and safety head Dave Wilmot. The commercialization of OpenAI also deepened the divide between its applied and safety divisions. While applied teams celebrated the rapid rollout of new products, safety teams felt that their concerns about alignment and ethical risks were being sidelined. The tension came to a head with the release of GPT-4, which some in safety felt hadn't been adequately tested despite the 6-month delay. A new era of AI. By the summer of 2023, OpenAI was at the center of a global AI boom. Microsoft's Azure platform saw a 21x increase in customers, driven by demand for OpenAI's models. Internally, OpenAI continued to push the boundaries of what its technology could do, even as it grappled with the limitations of its resources and the growing pains of rapid expansion. ChatGPT's success was a double-edged sword. It brought OpenAI unprecedented influence and revenue, but also exposed the company to new risks and challenges. As Altman reminded his team, the mission was far from over. OpenAI had woken up its competitors, and the race to shape the future of AI was just beginning. Chapter 12. Plundered Earth. Let me take you on a journey to Chile, a country whose breathtaking landscapes and rich natural resources have made it a focal point for the global tech industry's insatiable hunger for raw materials and energy. This chapter, Plundered Earth, explores the environmental, social, and cultural costs of the AI boom, as well as the resistance movements fighting to reimagine a more sustainable and equitable future. The Atacama Desert, a land of extraction. Chile's Atacama Desert, the driest place on Earth, has long been a site of extraction. Before colonization, indigenous communities thrived there, coaxing life from barren land. But the arrival of the Spanish Empire marked the beginning of a brutal history of resource exploitation. Over centuries, Chile became a supplier of raw materials, first for colonial powers and later for global markets. Today, nearly 60% of Chile's exports are minerals, primarily copper and lithium, essential for electronics and lithium-ion batteries. The mining industry dominates Chile's economy, but it has come at a steep cost. The Atacama's ecosystems have been devastated, its water sources depleted, and its indigenous communities left impoverished. The mining of copper and lithium has drained entire basins, displaced wildlife, and left toxic trails of arsenic in the air and water. Indigenous groups, like the Atacamanos, have seen their lands and livelihoods eroded, forcing many to work for the very industry that has dispossessed them. The AI boom in data centers. As the AI industry exploded, Chile became a key supplier of not only minerals but also of land, water, and energy for data centers. These facilities, essential for training and running AI models, require massive amounts of power and water. In 2024, Chile announced plans to host 28 new data centers, bringing in $2.6 billion in foreign investment. But this expansion has sparked fierce resistance from communities who see it as yet another chapter in the company's long history of extractivism. Data centers, once small and tucked away, have grown into sprawling megacampuses that consume staggering amounts of resources. A single AI query, like one from ChatGPT, uses about 10 times more electricity than a typical Google search. The largest data centers now require as much energy as entire cities, and their environmental toll is immense. They guzzle potable water for cooling, often in regions already suffering from severe droughts, and their construction depends on vast amounts of minerals like copper and lithium. Resistance in Chile. Chile has become a global epicenter of resistance to the tech industry's extractive practices. Indigenous communities, environmental activists, and local governments are pushing back through protests, lawsuits, and negotiations. In the Atacama Desert, black flags fly over homes as a symbol of defiance. Activists block roads to mining sites, demand research into the desert's ecosystems, and call for accountability from corporations and from the government. One of the most vocal critics is Sonia Ramos, an indigenous activist who has spent decades fighting against the mining industry. For Ramos, the problem isn't mining itself, her ancestors were miners, but the scale of modern extraction. The scale has devastated the land, deepened inequality, and left communities dependent on an industry that offers little in return. The fight against data centers. And the battle over data centers is playing out in places like Quilicura, a working-class municipality on the outskirts of Santiago. Once a lush area of wetlands and pastures, Quilicura has been transformed into an industrial zone with trash dumps and factories encroaching on its remaining green spaces. In 2012, Google built its first Latin America data center here, followed by plans for a second in 2019. But residents, led by activists like Alexandra Arancibia, began to push back. In Cerrolos, another working-class area, Google faced an even fiercer resistance. When activists discovered that the company's proposed data center would consume more than 1,000 times the annual water usage of the local population, they mobilized. The group, Musicat, formed by activists from various movements, combed through Google's environmental filings, organized protests, and even added the referendum question to block the project. In 2024, Chile's environmental court ruled against Google's water-using data center, forcing the company to revise its plans. The Global South's struggle. Chile's fight against extractivism is part of a broader struggle against the Global South. In Uruguay, for example, Google's plans for a massive data center sparked outrage during a devastating drought. Activists discovered that the facility would use 2 million gallons of water a day, equivalent to the daily consumption of 55,000 people. Protests erupted, and Google eventually revived its plans to use a waterless cooling system. But the fight continues as activists demand transparency and accountability for the full environmental and social impact of these projects. Reimagining AI development. Amid the resistance, a new vision for AI development is emerging. Activists, researchers, and architects are working together to imagine data centers that are integrated into their environments rather than extracted. In Quilicura, architecture students designed mock-ups of data centers that purify water, restore wetlands, and serve as public spaces. These speculative projects challenge the tech industry's narrative of progress and offer a glimpse of what a more sustainable future could look like. Chile's government is also beginning to listen. Activists like Arancibia and Barejos have been invited to consult on the country's national data center strategy and AI legislation. The Ministry of Science is acknowledging the social and environmental cost of AI and exploring ways to build technology on Chile's terms. A decolonial vision for AI. As Martin Tironi Rodó, a Chilean researcher, argues, the AI industry is rooted in a colonial ideology that imposes its worldview on the rest of the world. Chile, with its long history of resistance to extractivism, has the opportunity to lead the way in imagining a decolonial approach to AI, one that prioritizes sustainability, equity, and the well-being of the planet. But the forces arrayed against this vision are formidable. The tech industry's appetite for resources shows no sign of slowing, and the scale of its operations continues to grow. Still, the resistance in Chile and beyond offers hope that a different path is possible, one that values the earth and its people over profit.
We'll learn more about the far-reaching effects of artificial intelligence and large language models next week, so that's where we'll leave it for this week. This has been part 2 of Empire of AI by Karen Hao. Thanks for joining. That's a wrap.